Could spring a leak anywhere and you won't necessarily know it right away. That's too bad.
It was something I was
No,
able
we
to hold
can't
on
get anyone
to.
until Wednesday morning.
Oh no,
Oh,
that's
gosh.
even worse. Still supposed to have the portable shower still.
Oh, yeah. I don't care if it's cold, bring it on.
Thank you for mentioning the link.
Good evening, Bill.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know how I had this thing at 5:30.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe at one time it was, maybe other meetings that start at 5:30 and
I think we have, some meetings start at 5:30, some meetings start at 6:30. I don't think there's any regular time. Some of them start at 6. At least now, the city council meetings both start at 6. Used to be one started at 6 and one started at 7. I didn't wish that. You just have one time.
Yeah.
just never leave, never go home.
We do have all those, not survey monkeys, but for choosing the time, so.
Doodles.
Doodles, that's
Doodle
it.
poll. Yeah. I need to set one up for the Public Safety Committee.
Right.
Should be February, March.
Yes. Nick and I have both responded, I saw.
Yeah, I need to start over though.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So did everybody see the deer at Weimar today?
No,
What?
dear?
I went out and petted the thing.
Aw.
He came over to the coffee house, walked right up to the front door and stood there. And
I'm used
so,
to getting it.
A deer?
the deer.
Wow.
And it was somebody's pet or something, because that thing was way too big. We walked outside, chucked him under the chin, pet him a little bit, showed him my bike, see if he wanted to ride.
Wow.
Did you give it any money? Because it was probably looking for a few bucks.
Oh, that was good. That was good. No, but later I saw that people posted he went over to Weimar. He headed into that field behind Seth's, and then he must have wandered over to Weimar.
Huh?
Well, we do have a herd of deer that's hanging out at the airport that we're trying to get rid of, so maybe it wandered off from there.
Yeah.
Get rid of.
Yeah. It's dangerous for the planes.
How are you? How are you?
I mean,
It's been a month.
Huh?
Can you capture them?
We just kind of scare them, scare them away.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You should have the first 5 minutes of Bambi on a loop.
Hi.
I'm Chelsea. Chelsea, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I saw your introduction.
Oh,
It was
excellent.
exciting.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Same.
Well, you should bring the deer down and we'll host him here at City Hall.
Roast him, yeah.
Host him.
It just gets more and more.
Believe the droppings at Weimar.
Yay! Welcome back. Hello, hello. Good to be here. Give you this. Thank you. It's not really all that new, it's just got a new cover.
Say, well, we have a few minutes. Has everyone met each other? Just making sure.
Is that, can they use that link to get the video? Where's the link to the video?
So it's in the page. And it's the link is correct. It's the text on it, and I don't see what it edited. We'll have to talk to Heather and see how she did that. But yeah, if you go to agenda minutes.
You know how to edit the hyperlink behind it? If it's something I can help with real quick, I will.
That's the one that says the
2:8.
Yeah.
And even the video is weird. It says 2:8, but this is the 2:5 meeting. So.
Can you change that so that if people go there tonight, they won't get confused?
It's some sort of setting in Thrillshare, and I'm not sure where they got it buried. Like the actual URL's fine. It's just a new platform. I don't want to get in here.
Is the second meeting scheduled on the 8th?
No, it's scheduled 2 weeks later on the.
20th.
Yeah.
The 20th, yeah.
Okay. I must have just been put in the calendar wrong on mine because it's on the 8th.
And this meeting said January 29 online.
Oh,
Oh,
it originally was, yeah.
Yeah.
We took
And
that
here,
down
the event shows up on the 5th today. It's weird.
because the city council met on the 29th, I think.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because of the snow, the ice storm.
Oh, we had some events.
Yeah, and Counselor Holt is correct. The contact
Good job on the minutes, Stacy.
works here, but if you go
Okay,
to
fine.
Google.
Really good.
Thanks. I liked yours. I complimented yours yesterday.
Oh, you did?
A couple days ago, yeah. Yeah, you even put in a cute little table. It was really, really organized, and that just gets my insides all fun and warm.
Doesn't sound like me. You're so organized, you're fine. I do have a lot of balls in the air, but I love this committee. Me too. No, when the mayor called me, I was like, yeah, God, you're right. I mean, no, but also yes.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
You sure have a pretty lake out there.
Oh, I know. Filled up pretty quick.
It's pretty though. I mean, you gotta keep it full all the time.
I'll just run a hose
Oh, yeah.
in the summertime.
Sounds good.
It'll be inexpensive, huh? Yeah.
It's not very deep though, is it? I mean, it's just really shallow.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's deep enough for the ducks.
I was surprised how fast it filled up though.
Throw some koi in there.
Yeah.
Well, you throw koi in and then you're gonna be fighting off the herons, so it's a whole thing. Yeah.
And raccoons probably.
Okay, scratch that.
Oh, you're fine. Are you ready?
Yeah, whatever you are.
Great. All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. On Monday, February 5th. This is the meeting of the Water Rate Advisory Committee. And I thought before we go too much further, how about if we go around the table and just formally introduce ourselves? Since this is the first time this committee in this format has met. And so I'll go ahead and start and say hello. My name is Shelley Clark, and I'm a city councilor. I use she, her pronouns. And I'll go to my right.
Stacy Holt, City Councilor.
Chelsea Pisani, member at large for this committee.
Clark Kent, City Councilor.
Michelle Amberg, city manager.
Citizen.
Cliff Ballou, Public Works Director.
Matt Ban, dentist.
The committee's dentist. Yay!
Susan Piper, Finance Director and IT person here at the city.
So part of me is I go back and forth with the streaming platform and
Keeping the lights on.
presentation. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you are great. And we have an exciting addition that I don't think we've ever had at our meetings before, and so we have attendees.
Yes, we do.
Which is great. And so, since we have a few minutes, do we want to just go around and just introduce ourselves? And I guess, why did you choose to attend the Water Rate Advisory Committee meeting? How about if we start with Don?
I'm done. I'm just here.
My name is Bill Kent. This is the one committee I have not visited, so I added to my list.
I'm Jody Kent, wife visitor.
Well, great. Okay, well, so our first item on the agenda is to elect a chair and a secretary. And so I think at this point, I'll go ahead and open up the floor for nominations for the chair of this committee.
I would like to nominate Shelley Clark for chair.
Okay.
I love that idea.
I do too.
Is this a second kind of thing?
Yeah.
I'll second that in a hot second.
Okay. I will accept that nomination. Are there any other nominations? All right, seeing none, the nominations are closed. And so all of those in favor of electing Councilor Clark to serve as chair, please raise your hand or indicate yes. All right, and all those opposed? And we don't need to add an abstention, so we're good. All right, by a vote of 6-0, that motion passes. I will happily serve as your chair. Thank you so much. And so now I will open up the floor for nominations for the secretary.
Does anyone want to be secretary?
No
one
one
wants
wants to be secretary.
Does anyone kind of want to be secretary? I'll nominate Stacy. I feel like you did a great job.
I have time crunches right now, but I can take it on if you guys, I don't know that I could turn over minutes for the next meeting. That's my only issue.
Sure.
Okay. If I'm a fortune teller, and I don't know this for sure, but having a chance to preview the packet, we may be able to take care of all this tonight. I don't want to rush us, but I think it's doable.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. With that in mind, does that help you feel?
I'll take it on, I'm just warning you.
You're flexible.
I
mean, I'm personally not flexible, which is why I nominated you.
Well, yeah, that's my issue, yeah.
Okay. I'll second the nomination of Councillor Holt, and I'll offer to help if you can't.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep. If you write and you can't type it, I'll type it and add in anything.
Okay.
Okay. It's a team effort.
Excellent. Okay. Any other nominations? I'm assuming you're accepting the nomination with the tag team assist?
I mean, not really, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I genuinely did not want to do this right now, but I will do it if that's the flow, the way that things are going.
You might
so.
have a year to turn them in.
Yeah. It's not helpful though. You have to, I mean, if you don't do it right away, what kind of service are you doing to for your constituents? And so.
Okay. Would you like to decline?
No.
No?
I'll play nice.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it more than you know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so seeing no other nominations, all those in favor of electing Councilor Holt as secretary for the Water Rate Advisory Committee with the tag team assist of Tammy Shuck, please raise your hand or otherwise indicate yes. Okay, and all those opposed? All right. All right, by motion of 5-1.
Thank you,
motion
Councilor Holt.
passes. Thank you very much. All right, so then we'll move into the approval of the minutes from February 15th, 2023, just delightfully taken by our previous secretary, Councilor Holt. Are there any minutes to adjust? Any questions? If you don't know where they are in your packet. Did you happen to print out a separate set of minutes?
I did not print out a separate set of minutes, but I do have
I can tear my packet apart.
Well, I can take mine apart,
Okay.
it'll just have weird stuff on it. Like, oh, my agenda.
Oh, yeah.
I move to approve the minutes of the last meeting of the Water Rate Advisory Committee. I'm trying to find the date, February 15th, 2023.
Excellent, okay. That sounds like, yep, we have a second. So there's a motion on the table from Tammy Shuck to approve the minutes from February 15, 2023 as presented, seconded by Matthew Band. Any discussion? All All right, so all of those in favor of presenting, or of not presenting, of approving the minutes as presented, please raise your hand or otherwise indicate a yes. All right, and all those opposed? All right, by a motion of 6-0, our minutes have been approved from February 15th, 2023.
Before we move on, I nominated you. Who seconded you?
Dr. Bain?
Okay. And then Tammy nominated me, right? Or no, you did.
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up.
Okay, you're fine.
And then Dr. Bean seconded, right?
I seconded
Oh,
your
yeah.
nomination.
And then you motion to approve minutes. Okay, thank you, I'm caught up. Okay,
You
heard.
guys need to sign them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So sorry.
No. All right, I'll just say approved to what?
I knew I would reach out.
Oh, like on the,
Yeah.
on the last page of the minutes, Counselor, there's a spot to.
Oh,
approve
yeah.
and sign.
All right, so I am,
There you go.
yes.
And do we start right at 6:30?
6:34.
4?
Or 6:34?
Okay.
According to that clock.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Not necessarily the most accurate.
Who's next?
It is what it is. Couple minutes.
These to Grace. Great.
Excellent. All right. Next order on our agenda is public input. Do we have any public input? All right. Seeing none, we will move on, but we will also just save space in case there's public input a little bit later. All right, so the next section on the agenda is to read Section 47 of the city charter. So this is also in your packet. I'm just going to go ahead and read aloud that section. So Section 47, water rates. So subsection A, notwithstanding any other provision in this charter, the city of Creswell, beginning the fiscal year following passage of this measure, shall determine water rates on an annual basis as part of the budget adoption process. Water rates shall be set so as to fully cover the actual costs of providing water services. Subsection B, for water rates effective following the passage of this measure, a water rate advisory committee shall be established by the mayor to review and recommend water rates for the upcoming fiscal year. The advisory committee shall be composed of 6 members, 3 of whom shall be councilors, 2 citizens of Creswell, and 1 at-large position. The city council shall hold a public hearing prior to the council's adoption of water rates. Subsection C, setting of water rates shall be performed by the city council as provided in this section. There shall be no requirement to submit proposed water rates to city voters for approval. Should the council approve a water rate increase so as to fully cover the actual costs of providing water services, the amount of the water rate increase shall not be limited by financial measures such as the rate of inflation or the consumer price index. Subsection D, for purposes of this section, water rates are the rates charged by the city to users of the city's water utility system. Water rates include any per cubic foot charge as well as any base or fixed charges assessed to the water utility customers. Subsection E, for purposes of this section, the actual cost of providing water services includes all of the costs associated with providing water services to city water utility customers. Costs include, but are not limited to, infrastructure costs, water permit costs, water supply costs, maintenance costs, personnel costs, and debt service costs. And this was approved by the voters at the September 15th, 2015 election. And so with that, we actually have a couple of different pieces on the agenda for tonight. So the first is that we're going to review and discuss the water utility rates. And then we're going to review and discuss the sewer utility rates. And then we're also going to review and discuss the transportation utility fee rates, which is also known as the TUF. And the reason that we are looking at the TUF or reviewing the rates of the TUF tonight is because last year, when we elected, or when we voted to put the TUF in place, we said we want this to be reviewed annually, much like the Water Rate Advisory Committee. And so that's why we linked it together, because we knew that we were going to have a committee of individuals that represent both the council and the community to give input on that. And so that's why all three of those pieces are together tonight, and that is different than past years. Okay. So with that, I'm actually going to turn the floor over to our Finance Director, Jim Piper.
Thank you. Let me turn this over to the streaming audience so they can see the presentation. You all see? First of all, I'll open, like I do every year, and thank the volunteers of the community for being on this committee. Thank the counselors for putting additional meeting time in to do this committee as well. And the voters who approved this amendment to the city charter so that every year we're required to go through water and sewer rates. Many cities don't do this every year. They may do a 5-year forecast and bring in outside person who will look into their crystal ball and look out 5 years, and there could be an anomaly year one, and they wait 4 more years to adjust rates. This is an annual process, and it makes my job a lot easier putting together the budget, so I really appreciate that.
And it saves the city a considerable amount of money, because doing a rate study is probably around $30,000. So by you giving your time to do this each year, you save us quite a bit.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting used to wearing glasses, so forgive me for losing track of them. Some of this will be review from prior years if you've been on the Water Rate Advisory Committee before. And when we first started this process, we looked at the users of the Creswell water. That data is in the utility billing system, so it's readily available. And what we found out was that most of our users are residential. 94% of our users are residential, and the usage is for those residents, including multifamily dwellings, equals about 89% of our water use. And of the meters that are in the city, 3/4 inch meters is predominantly what we see, 96%. The city has used the potential demand-based methodology. It's based on the meter size because that restricts the amount of water the user can have going through that meter at a given time. The base rate per the charter covers the fixed cost. Those are irregardless of use. And then the balance, this methodology balances the ability to pay and the cost to serve. An example of that, maybe to illustrate it, is that a 3/4 inch meter is typically a household, whereas a 2-inch meter would probably be the hotel, for example. And the hotel's going to use a lot more water, and they have a far greater ability to pay than, say, a residential individual. The potential demand base, due to low commercial industrial use, is very similar to a flat base. So we could almost do just a flat base. The only problem with that is it's not really fair to the higher users, or to the typical user as opposed to the higher user. And then eventually we will have more industrial and commercial come on in the years to come. Additional water usage covers the variable costs, and those are like the chemicals, the maintenance, and the electricity at the plant. see how the base rate covers fixed costs, we could do a really simplified back of the envelope calculation and take the number of meters that we have in the system, 2,327 meters at the 4125 base rate per month times 12 months, and you get 1.151 million in projected annual base rate revenues. And if you take out personal services and debt services, these are essentially fixed. Personal services, we have one plant operator, so it's not variable on usage. That's at 1.124. The difference there is just the variability in the meters, the few that we do have that are more than the 3/4 inch base rate. I want to touch base on grant funds. In fiscal year 2021, the general fund provided $28,000 to help Creswell utility customers. This was during the pandemic. It was really helpful. All of the funds were used, and it was administered through community sharing down in Cottage Grove. So folks had to apply for it and show that they had a need for it. Lane County Human Services followed suit, and they brought in $75,000 over 3 years. And again, those funds were expended in the 3-year period ending fiscal year 24. In fact, we're in 24, but it was pretty much done by the fall of 23. They'd ran out of funds. The Oregon legislature has not passed a state program to fund water utilities for low income yet, but they did have a bill in the last legislature that they were working on. I'm not sure where it's at. I did a Google search and tried to see where it was going. Michelle's shaking her head.
I don't think it's in the short session.
So hopefully the state of Oregon has a low income heating program. Hopefully water and sewer utility will be something down the road. So the first thing we look at is how we did in fiscal year 2023. The reason 2023 and not 24 because we're still in 24. 23 is completed. We had our auditors come in and look at the transactions, and we have some solid numbers to present to the committee at this time. The water funds meeting its operational costs and the capital reserve requirements that this committee and the city council set forth. We brought in $442,145 in revenues over expenditures in fiscal year 2022-23. There was an increase in materials and services due to chemical and fuel prices, as you remember. But the prior year, we had an annual rate increase of 4%. It says 22-23, but that was 21-22. 22-23, we had a 1% rate increase. And that was after a recommendation to just make sure we didn't have any surprises. There was a recommendation of 1%, but the way the inflation was going in last year at this time, there was some concerns about some variability in the inflation rates. We had a 2.76% increase in water usage compared to the prior year. So we'll get to that as we get through the slides.
What was the correction you called out? My apologies.
It was the third bullet point.
Third bullet should be 21, 22, or
21, 22, and
Thank you.
then we had a 1% in 22, 23.
and then at 1%. Okay.
For 22-23.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. In fiscal year 2018-2019, as a side note, this is the first time that water rates have been below the 1% of median household income since 2012-2013, and the city's continuing that trend, and a lot of that has to do with the work of this committee. On the next slide, you see an affordability rate with a 3% annual increase in rates. The affordability rate is based on a 1% of median household income. Granted, Creswell has the highest median household income in Lane County. It kind of shows that we're very affordable in this slide. And this is for the average 5,000 gallons of service, which is typical of a four-person household. So you can see that we have room for rate increases without going over that affordability mark within the city. Some may ask why revenues over expenditures, and the reason for that is reserves for future costs, future capital costs. And we've kind of summarized the priority costs out of the water master plan in this list here. As you can see, these are 2018 dollars, 4.5% or 415,000 for the arsenic removal, infrastructure improvements, and that's to bring the wells online to help us with our water supply. Should we reach a point in the Coast Fork that we need to bring in more water. And then Priority 1 distribution projects, 1.8 million, and Priority 1B projects, distribution projects at 3 million. We've been saving up for those. And in the next slide, you can see that. Yes, Manager Amber.
Where's the lead project? The lead identification and replacement and all of that? Is that in a priority 1?
No, that is just a requirement of the health division. It's not in our,
It's not listed anywhere.
it's not listed as a budget item. We're just gonna do that out of our maintenance budget that I'm coming up with this year. It's not a capital improvement project.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do get thrown some of those in the maintenance budget every year. New requirements for.
And do you feel like you have it in the maintenance budget? Like it doesn't have to be something that should really be added to 1A or 1B?
No, it's not gonna cost us a ton.
Okay.
It's more time than it is a cost of expenditure. We have to do an inventory of every single service, and then we have to go do a background check on when the housing was built, because prior to 1986 is when they're looking for. And so we have to look through that, get that separated out. And then they're doing they came out with some new restrictions, or not restrictions, but some help that we can do basically an average. So we don't have to do every service now, it's a percentage. So they've narrowed it down, but it's gonna take time, but not really cost the city money other than wages.
Yeah, thank you. On the next slide, we see the historical operating expenses and revenues in 2022-23, projected 23-24, the current fiscal year, and then projected 24-25 in blue column. That's the year that we're proposing rates. And then the 4 years after that, so we have 5 forward years of forecasting. Looks like we'll have about 4.3 million with a 0% rate increase this year. And then 3% increases in the following years are just thrown in there as placeholders. That's kind of just a generic assumption. But as you can see, without a rate increase this year, the fund is still looking good. So without further ado, staff recommends no rate increase, and part of that is due to the better than expected results, and that was that water usage being greater than the prior year. Some of that has to do with the water fill station. So a lot of work tracking those numbers in the summertime, but it does bring in some additional revenue. We also are looking at a little bit of a debt service reduction in the coming year. So it's not a really good idea to raise rates when you have better results, you have less fixed costs in the coming year. And more good news, the city received $400,000 in some transmission line repairs or not repairs, it's more of a seismic retrofitting.
Right, yeah, so we're doing some seismic retrofitting to our reservoirs. And we got, like Jim said, approximately 400,000 for that work. And then on top of that, the slide that had the priority one project for 1.8 million, that's actually a replacement of the transmission line from the reservoirs all the way down to basically Oregon Avenue. That's within our water master plan. And we feel like we're in a pretty good spot to get a 1.7 million grant for that. So that's kind of playing into this also. We're not there yet, but we feel like we probably are going to receive that.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good work.
It's taken 2 years. It's been,
1.7 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the 400K is the grant, and then we have a little bit of out-of-pocket expenses.
Right, there's some matches that go with that.
And 1.7, we're gonna get about 1.6 of it in grants, so very helpful to our reserve fund, very helpful to the water fund. And we haven't quite been awarded the 1.6, but they keep asking questions, so. And they've awarded the other 2 projects, so we feel like they're gonna follow through with that.
Question.
Counselor Holt has a question.
Oh, sorry.
What's a reduction in debt service? What are you referring to?
The debt service, you'll see in slide 10. Debt service is the third operating expense down. It's gonna go down in 25-26 from 381,116 to 154,993.
because
So-
we're paying off the debt.
That's what I want to know. What
Yeah, oh, sorry.
For
For past project, for project.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, we're getting to the end.
Yeah, for the water fund, there's 2 loans that made up the water plant
Okay,
project, and one of them will be paid off.
thank you.
Let's contrast that with sewer rates.
What?
Sewer doesn't have a separate meter, as we found out. So in the wintertime, we base it on the water that's going through the water meter, or the usage that's going through the water meter. In the summertime, that's with the assumption that all the water coming in is gonna go out through the sewer. But in the summertime, people are watering outside, they're filling, there's splash pools or there's swimming pools, and so we use that winter average in the summertime as their winter average in the summertime is their usage, since sewer isn't metered. And we charge a per dwelling unit charge for multi-unit properties. It's different than what we do for water. How'd the sewer fund do? Not bad. Revenues over expenditures, $450,843 before transfers. And part of that was cost controls over materials and services, and an annual rate increase of 5%. And our reserves for future costs, why are we getting revenues over operating costs? Well, we have some rather large capital projects coming up. Sewer plant upgrade of 15+ million. Now this is what we know of as our our 2018 wastewater system facilities plan. After that was adopted, there were some more regulations on what could be put out in effluent, so we're back to the drawing board and we're going through a wastewater system facilities plan update. And in doing the permit, the recent permit, the DEQ also threw $10 million worth of infrastructure projects at us, so we're looking at 25+ million in future projects. Now, those are known dollars as of 2018. The infrastructure projects are going to be based on the smoke testing and the TV scoping that they also required in the permit. So that could change. Our priority projects could be fewer, or we have different alternatives. Cliff can go into details on those. So we may not hit that 10 million plus, but it's still a lot of dollars in projects.
Yeah, we probably will.
We will, okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of projects. They're actually in engineering right now. We're going through an RFP project. Our permit has a compliance schedule with A, B, C, D, all the way down for like 10 projects. And each one of those takes a certain step to get through. So we're in engineering to put out an RFP for TVing. When the TVing gets done, it's going to show where there's issues within the collection system. That goes back to the engineering firm, and they do a prioritization, and it's gonna be capital projects 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't mean that the level 3 doesn't get done, it's just at a later date. So it's gonna be probably a little bit more upfront, and then taking care of the level 1s, and then 2s, and then 3s, and it's all in a time frame, but all of it has to be addressed within that 7-year span. And with prices going up, it's hard to tell you what they're gonna be, but I would assume that 10 million is probably still in the ballpark.
And that's for slip lining?
Correct, we're looking at slip lining, which they send like this plastic liner down the pipe and blow it up, and it adheres to the inside, and then they come in and reattach the laterals, which is a much cheaper alternative to replacement. We were going to do full replacement, but there's no way we'd ever afford it, so we're looking at this kind of interim fix.
So forgive me if I haven't looked all the way through, but last year when we met, there was potential like earmark for some sort of grants and everything, considering the DEQ kind of threw this on us and it paused growth for Creswell for a gazillion years. So have we had any movement at all for anything in any way, shape, or form that's gonna help us through this?
One of the things that we have to do is we have to get some good numbers on how much it's gonna cost.
Sure.
So the engineering has to take place.
Okay.
Once we have the good numbers, we actually got an invitation from Merkley and Wyden to submit our project for an earmark, a federal earmark.
Right.
So there's a possibility in the future, once we have the number, we can ask them for the money. And also Val Hoyle came by and we talked about it. And she's a real junior member and doesn't have any clout, so she probably won't be in the millions, but she probably can get us maybe some.
Okay.
So, but the big ask will be Wyden and Merkley, because
Sure.
they've been there forever and they have a lot of power, so.
Right. So
That matters.
Are we looking at like less expensive funding, sort of like a lower interest loan, or are we looking at grants or both?
We're gonna ask for grants.
Sure.
But we probably will get a combination of grants and loans.
Okay.
We will probably not get a full earmark for for
Sure.
paying for it. And so we'll have to go to the USDA or to the state revolving water fund to try and make up the difference, the gap funding, so.
Okay.
It'll be a mosaic.
So it's which we still have to consider when we're looking at rates, but nothing's promised enough to actually consider it for rate increases.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get cheap money no matter what we
Sure.
go. I mean, the worst case would be to have a gap that we have to finance through conventional loan.
Okay.
And that would be very expensive.
Sure. Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
If I could maybe jump in for a minute. One of the real issues is we would love to, and staff has looked at a lot of areas that we could probably get funding, but they want some sort of like almost a turnkey project. So they want it engineered and they want a number that it's gonna cost. So you can't put your hand out and go, we don't really know what we want, but give us money anyway.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of stuck in this little holding pattern until we get some engineering numbers back.
But it's still huge progress from last year when we were like,
Yeah.
this was dropped on your plate a month before
Our-
last year's.
Our electeds know about it, which is
Yeah.
huge.
good.
We're on their radar, so that's kind of nice.
Awesome, okay, thank you.
When you say permits, you mean DEQ permits?
Correct, yeah.
And when you say TVing, you mean scoping, looking in the current
Yeah,
system?
they run a TV camera down.
Okay, I just wanna
and
make
look
sure I
at the
remembered.
internal parts of the pipe, yeah.
Like a
Okay.
colonoscopy for the city.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to make sure I knew what you meant.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but do we have an ETA on this engineering work?
So the engineering for the RFP is going to be out this summer. The TVing work is required by our permit to be done by end of 2026. We're hoping to beat all of those numbers or those dates.
I'm sorry, the RFP by the summer and the, what's the other one?
The required TVing work
Oh,
is required to be done by the end of 2026.
And the West Yost plan update?
The facilities plan, I went and looked at that because there was a question the other day. It's actually December
December of '24?
24.
That's great, because then we'll have numbers.
The facilities plan?
Yep.
That's what we're waiting for the sewer plant upgrade, is the
With
facilities
the
plan.
engineering? Okay.
Yeah, West Yost is an engineer that does sewer plants.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
a
plans
hired
by
third-party
December
consultant.
24. Okay.
Very good, yeah. When we got that 2018 facilities plan update, there was, like, right on the heels of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff, there was some requirements on ammonia, so it was like, okay, now we have to address that, and it wasn't in the original engineering plans, and
Right,
so
there
we're,
was two additional items, and one is thermal loading, and the other one is ammonia. And our plant doesn't address those at all.
if it's any indicator, the DEQ has been working with us to help us get some funding for that plan update, so, some foreshadowing, you'll see at the next council meeting, a loan at 1% for the amount of the plan update and forgivable portion of 100,000 of the 219,120. So they are working up with us, and hopefully we build that relationship and continue on into the next phases as we try to get some big capital projects
It's
done.
nice of them to work on.
I was gonna say, it only felt fair after they slapped it on us.
Right.
So it'd be nice, like, we're
They're
gonna slap
probably
you on the
making,
wrist
they're
and then-
probably making money on working on it with us
Oh,
too.
probably, but, I mean,
That had a lot to do with Manager Amber getting DEQ and Business Oregon in the same room together with Cliff and I, and
awesome.
the city planner.
Good work.
Good job.
Yeah.
They could do more.
They could do So we had that debt service reduction in 21, fiscal year 21, and then we talked about some financial options. The IFA is another one, that's that Business Oregon piece. Infrastructure Finance Authority, they call themselves Business Oregon. They try to help development in cities in Oregon, so part of that is having viable water and sewer. DEQ, of course, has the Clean Water State Revolving Funds, and the USDA as well gets involved in clean water projects. $2 million in reserves, so the city has been saving up. It's not just a wait and see. It's the city's been doing their due diligence. On the next slide, slide 15 is a historical to projected financial, along with transfers. And these transfers are the revenues over expenditures from the prior audited year. They're the then budgeted transfer because we know the number. We've kind of projected them out based on how the projected results will occur for revenues over expenditures. Given a rate increase. So projecting 3% rate increase in 24-25 for sewer. You see the fund will stop having transfers in the near future and actually have a loss. And that's just not going to sit well. We threw in a capital outlay of $10 million with grant or loan proceeds of $10 million, and spending the 2 million that's sitting in reserves, so a total project of 12 million, just to see what it would do to the fund and give us kind of what our lending power is right now, our borrowing power rather is right now. With a 5% increase on slide 16, you see that the fund is fairly stable. So we're meeting our current requirements year over year with a 5% annual rate increase. And so that's kind of baseline for where we're at right now with the sewer fund. And then with a 9% rate increase, which we kind of talked about last year, if we didn't do a 5, we'd be probably looking at a 9 this year. If we did 2 years of 9% with a 3% next couple of years, and maybe there's a 5% in the future year. These are all just presumptions, just to give you an idea of what that looks like to the reserves and the operating income of the fund. We have a little bit more money going into reserves, so we also were able to finance, about 12 million in projects in fiscal year 25-26, and put a little bit in the savings going forward. So for sewer rate recommendations, we can increase it by 9%. As you see, your borrowing capacity is at 12 million, and you're building some reserves for future projects. If you do a 5% rate increase, you're still borrowing, your borrowing capacity is still $12 million, and your operations are stable in the future years. And a 3% increase for fiscal year 24-25. We still have that 12 million borrowing power, but we're going to end up in deficit in future years. And part of the reason is, I should go back, is that included in those projections in the future years are the debt service payments on that borrowing. So we did take in consideration the borrowing at 2.5%, and fingers crossed we get a good loan at 2.5%, and maybe they let us go out 30 years. We'll see. So that's kind of where the sewer's at. Gives you some good some examples of what the rate increases will do for the fund and its balances going forward. If you're okay, I'll move forward to the transportation utility fee, and then we can look at all the recommendations kind of in whole. So for the transportation utility fee, this is the first year. It's a $4 per resident. Businesses pay more based on traffic generation, and it gets into the weeds there. I just left a high-level point on the slide. We targeted $255,000 annually for a funding gap that was based on our capital improvement budget, and it accelerates a typical street project timeline by 3 years. So it's the first year in implementation. We did have some unanticipated corrections from the county assessor's data. We did have some folks that called in, and we researched it and found that the assessor's square footage was much larger than their actual space, and that was only for businesses that had like a shared building footprint. The assessor didn't like break down each of the units in that, and so we had to go through and break those down and correct them. We did send out letters to all the businesses before the implementation, but a couple of them waited until it was implemented to actually call in, but I still appreciated all of those. We knew it was going to be a rough first year. You're always fine-tuning, and it is very crystal ball, even with the data that we have. We did have some waivers too for low income, and I think those folks really appreciated the fact that they could do that, even though it was 50% instead of the full amount. They still appreciated that.
I didn't realize we were offering waivers for low income.
There are some waivers for low income in there, yeah. It's based on HUD, 80% of HUD, and you have to certify that every year. And there's some, you have to provide some sort of source document, like a tax return or something, and fill out an application on our website.
So it's not our service, it's a HUD service.
No, it's just, that's the like standard, like benchmark out there that's readily available. We can pull that data and see what that mark is for our area.
I
Yes.
didn't realize we were giving people the opportunity to not pay this.
Yeah, there
Or a
were,
lower rate. It's not that they have a zero, it's that it's reduced.
Okay.
It's $2 instead of $4 if they. Right.
Yeah, but as the years go by, we know that $2 or $4 or whatever is gonna be a lot more than that. So I think that giving discounts to people does matter. And I just wanna know more about it, that's all.
okay. How'd we do in the TUF? Well, we have a gap of about 40 grand after implementation and kind of ironing everything out. So we're projecting to collect about 215,000 as opposed to 255,000. The caveat to that is that at the same time, the state passed some legislation to help our state fund exchange program, and it increased by 40,000. So it kind of filled in that gap, and at the end of the day, we were able to make our expected transfers to reserves, and we're still on the same timeline. And then for next year, we're looking at adding a few more TUFs. We've got some development going on, albeit a moratorium. We still have three big commercials coming on with Aspire Health and Taco Bell and McDonald's. Either pulling their permits or in the middle of construction. So we know that they're coming online. We're also going to have some transfers in 24-25 of about 160,000. Again, that's because of these state fund exchange grant revenues that are coming in. And that's as of that $334,757,000 for this Second Street project. That's collected already, so we're not projecting that number. We've already collected that much, and we were only projecting $293,668 for that going forward. We're still expecting better than expected state fund exchange grants. So at the end of the day, we're looking pretty solid for the TUF and for the street fund and the capital projects that we want to get out every 3 years as opposed to every 6 years. I didn't project out any further. If you do projections or do analytics or statistics, you know that you want to have about 5 years worth of data before you can project forward. And so without really looking in the crystal ball, I just left it at 24-25 fiscal year. So for the TUF rate, I don't believe there's a need for a rate increase. Again, the increase in the federal funding through the state fund exchange is currently filling in that gap. And we need more historical data to do a reliable projection out 5 years. To recap the rate recommendations, since we just covered a whole bunch of information, water rate, no increase. The sewer, 953, I kind of put out there. This committee can decide where they ultimately land, but those were some good examples, so you can see what those rates do. And the TUF, no rate increase. On the next slide, we look at the effect of a 9% sewer rate increase on a household bill with those other mentioned zero increases on water, zero on TUF. I threw in the public safety fee because this committee's asked in the past to, that's on the bill, so let's see what it looks like. We don't know what their increase is going to be at this point, so we just threw in the generic 3%. Fingers crossed and hoping that's where we land. I'm not sure, but I didn't want to leave it out because it would then leave out something that's on the utility bill. But with that 9% sewer rate increase, you can see that over the current year, water rates would go up $6.19%, or $6.19, or 4% of the total utility bill.
Thank you.
With a 5% increase in sewer, just kind of holding steady with the sewer fund, that utility bill would only go up $3.68, or 3% of the total utility bill. Yes?
Yeah, so just to clarify then, so as we look at kind of like bottom line numbers, right? So that percentage increase, or like the total of like either the $3.68 per month or the $6.19 per month, that is with the public safety fee, like that 3% included in that as well, right?
Yeah, with a 3% increase in public safety fee.
Depending on what they've negotiated in their contract, it generally ranges between 3% and 5%.
Less than $1 at max, yeah.
Yeah, so you can see that the sewer is just, is gonna be the driver in the increase on all of these.
So just to clarify, Cliff, we're still looking at a complete pause on anything more than 5 hookups or whatever per year until everything is dealt with sewer and DEQ, right?
Close. Yeah, so we have a moratorium.
Right.
And within the permit, there's like I mentioned, there's like 8 or 9 or 10, I don't remember,
Right.
milestones we have to hit. And with each one of those, they'll give us an incremental amount of connections. So we did smoke testing, for example. That was the biggest one we're going to get. They gave us 15 additional hookups. As we go down through the years, we're going to get 5 or 10. Off the top of my head, I think we could get maybe 75. So in the next 7 years, the max amount of connections would be like 75. Total.
So like 10 a year, what's our typical?
But that's greatly improved from last year because the information we got is we're looking at 5,
Right.
right? And that was what we knew walking
Yeah.
into how do
It
we
was scary.
increase? It was terrifying.
So to answer your question, it depends on what the environment is looking like for expansion of the city, right? And so if there's a lot of subdivisions that come in, we might have 100 a year in a good growth year. In a down year, it might only be 8 or 10. With the moratorium, it's really choke that down so that people.
When's the last time we've had a big,
Well, right now we have 30 available. We've got a subdivision that's bigger than that.
Right.
So he's not going to be able to finish it. Plus, we
Okay.
have someone who got in ahead of him for one.
oh,
So, yeah, so.
okay. So there's the active subdivisions being worked on?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And if there's
and-
any apartment complexes, make that number really accelerate.
Yeah, that
So if you
makes
have like
sense.
a apartment complex that has 75 units in it, well, all of a sudden.
That's your whole 10-year
that's your-
supply.
Yeah.
Well, and now's the time that all that money's available and everybody's building low-income apartment units. So we are not going to be able to benefit from that. But I have talked with some of the people at the DEQ, and I think as we can show that we have capacity at the plant as we do these milestones, they're going to be open to renegotiating the numbers. But we'll sit down and say, okay, you say we can have 5. We believe the plant can deliver 7 or 8, and then we'll negotiate from there. So it'll be that kind of a process in the next few years. And it'll only be on the west side of the freeway. There's a whole different system on the east side.
But it's not as written in concrete as it was when we met last year, that's good to know.
Has there been
I think
any-
there's some possibility for negotiation.
Which is awesome. Okay. Cool.
Has there been any development on the east side with the private system?
No.
Well, isn't that huge?
There's
That
a
huge
retirement
buildings?
home that's going in
Yeah,
over there.
that's what I
but
thought.
Right.
That was an already serviced lot.
Oh, okay, okay.
There will be, Taco Bell will go in. There is interest in developing some residential over there, and the person is really pressing to get the issue with the main addressed, but we have not had any luck in negotiating that, in negotiations that would loosen that up. Ultimately, the DOJ has to approve whatever is being proposed, and they're going to be picky. And yeah, so far, we haven't hit that spot.
I think we also had some development on that Sunday Drive that kind of halted with the market kind of halting. And then I didn't really touch base on the potential solutions. I think that's going to be addressed in the plan, but we have been going through some more creative thoughts on those, and those have pros and cons. One of which is connecting to the north with the metropolitan wastewater, but it requires the political will of those cities up north.
And we don't know what the cost is going to be.
Yeah.
Boring under the
But yeah, Cliff and Curtis have been looking at some very creative solutions, using a natural solution for temperature, to bring the temperature down, rather than a cooling system.
Cooling towers.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, like geothermal.
Sort of, it's basically creating our own wetlands with shade
Okay.
and using the ground temperature.
I don't know if you've been to the Oregon Gardens, but they do that. There's a whole wetlands on the side of the road away from the park. That whole wetlands actually is sewage. That's a sewer treatment area, and that's what it's for, is to cool the effluent.
Doesn't
It's
have
really
the same
beautiful.
ring to it as Oregon
Gorgeous.
Gardens.
Because last time we met, we discussed that there was potential that we were gonna be able to decrease the overall need by potentially drilling under the freeway, connecting with Eugene.
Yeah,
And so.
that's one of the options.
That's still kind of like meh. And all of that hinges on what? Meeting with the engineers, also the people of Eugene? Or is it like not even in talks?
They're a special district.
Right.
So they have all of the governmental responsibilities of a special district. So if they're going to grow their district, they have to go through this, not exactly the same process as a city, but they have to get buy-in from their customers.
Okay.
And so they have to work through that. They haven't even worked through whether or not they're going to cooperate or work with the county on the county's proposal. So, you know, we need them to get it down to Short Mountain for it to make sense to us.
Sure.
And so far, to my knowledge, they haven't gone there.
No, they're not there. I mean, I think potentially it's going to get there, but
How, when?
we don't know the timeline.
So we ultimately need to raise funds as though that's never gonna happen. And if it does, it's a bonus.
That's part of the reason we hired this engineering firm to look at our facilities plan again is there's two parts to that. One is the actual plant build and one is the connection to the MWMC.
Okay.
And so they're facilitating part of that with us, you know, in the mix. But the really crux of the whole thing is MWMC first has to be allowed to do it. And they have 3 boards that it has to go through. They have the City of Eugene, the City of Springfield, and then they have their own board that's made up of county commissioners and a few others. And so, you know how things have to go through city council? They have 3 of those boards that has to okay it before they can. And then after that, they have to kind of do a study on capacity.
Sure.
And we have to give them a bunch of numbers, which is what this engineering firm will do, is get us all those numbers. So the ball's rolling, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through.
And they just approved to build a facility that's going to be a big material recovery facility in Goshen, the county did. And they press back the priority of getting a line down to the landfill. So the county's not pressing it as much as they were. In the past, when the city of Coburg asked to be included in the same sort of arrangement, they said no. So it's, we can do our due diligence, we can, do the best we can, and in the end, whatever is available is what we'll take, I guess.
But in the big scheme of things, if, let's say we do 9% this year, and 2 years from now, we find out that they can hook up, we can potentially drop that rate increase down to 2% that year, because we could be, right, we could be like, oh, we just saved $8 million by being able to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't have enough information this year to consider that in the rate increase.
Yeah, everyone I've talked to says to expect rates to go up, not down.
Well, yeah.
From that partnership.
Yeah, that partnership will be very
It
expensive.
will not save us money. But what it will do is it will take the DEQ off our backs.
Right.
And it'll take away the need for an operator, and it'll just change our system. We will no longer be a wastewater producing system, we'll be a customer of a larger system.
Well, but the original concern last year was, okay, let's say doing it on our own is gonna be 25 million, right? And doing it with the help of the city of Eugene might be 18 million. We're eliminating a certain, just to get DEQ off of our backs. So what I'm getting at is, it might be more expensive in the long run to be their customer, but we're eliminating that huge upfront amount that we need to just get DEQ off. And so that was kind of the way that
Guarantee that.
well, but that's kind of how I viewed it last year when we were talking. It was
Yeah.
like, hey, we could do option A, option B, this is what we're looking at. But I guess what I'm getting at is, if we look at a 9% this year, there's potential in the long run that it might save us $6 million, but we can't even foresee that that might be a thing yet.
Right, yeah. We're looking at raising a rate to also put it into reserves.
Right.
And again, we may get an earmark.
Right.
Which means that we won't be as dependent on those reserves. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Hope?
I just want to remind everyone that median income is median, it's not average, and it's not representative of what the actual income looks like here. Like we don't know how many people are under or over that median income. And I hate using median income for decisions like this. I think it's irresponsible, because median is literally the person that makes the most money in Creswell. Who knows who that is, and who knows how many millions they make a year, right? To the person that makes nothing, and they cut it right in the middle. So I don't like using that, and I just want to remind people that I don't think it's a good representation of our community. So
We can be in the same boat as you, but we don't get to make that call. The federal government makes that call when it comes to the money. So the federal government looks at our median income and says, do you meet our level that we want for, a low-income loan?
I don't doubt that it starts at the top,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's, and whether they do that to us or not, that doesn't necessarily make me feel like it's fair for me to do that to my constituents.
I don't
Yeah.
think we are.
No, we're
but-
not. I'm just saying, I just wanted to point out that median is not the same as average. That's all I was getting at. Yeah.
And I just want to also share that Curtis has done a lot of work with the USDA and is trying very much to desegregate the income on the east side of the freeway from the west side, so that the true median income, when the feds look at it, will be of the customers that use the system, not everyone in Creswell.
He's working with
So-
who, the DEA?
No, he's working with the census.
Oh,
And the USDA has.
USDA,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's typically where we get money from.
Oh, okay.
And they're counting the east income.
Right.
But the east doesn't use our sewer system.
Right.
So they
Right.
shouldn't be counted when we're applying
So
for
right
a
now,
grant
that
to
median
serve-
counts that side.
Correct.
Counts that side, and
Yeah.
the system that we're applying for a grant for doesn't serve that side.
No, in fact, I would
So
guess
Curtis is
that our
working-
median income on this side is a lot less
Yeah.
than that side, yeah.
So Curtis is
He's working on it.
doing a good job of trying to get that to be understood at the federal level.
For it to be fair, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Director Piper, you were going to say something?
I was just going to add on to Manager Amberg's comment about that, is that we talked about this with the DEQ and the USDA and Business Oregon, and they were all on board with this. They were like, of course, this data needs to be desegregated because,
The
like
system
Manager Amberg said, they're not even users
They're
of the
not using
system.
it. Yeah.
And wouldn't that also potentially change our ability to get grants and stuff like that too? Yeah, that's what I thought.
We want a
Oh,
lower
absolutely.
median income.
Like, can we work on that?
We
Like,
want it as
is there a
low
way
as
we can
possible.
expedite this process? Is there any letters we can write? Like,
Well, unfortunately, the census tract is not divided by the freeway, so it takes some figuring.
okay.
Are there any additional questions for Director Piper?
Thank you, Jim.
Good job, thank you.
Wonderful.
No homework for you.
Do you want to type my notes?
All right. So we have about 20 minutes left in our allotted time. And so I'll just go ahead and kind of start us back out with kind of the discussion of water utility rates. What it is that I heard from Director Piper is that the city is not recommending any increase in water utility rates. Is there?
I think that's great.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we set our water and tough fee, that we do not increase those this year, and put forward a 5% increase for sewer.
So there is
Whole
a
hog, huh?
motion on the table to recommend no.
It's a
I'm gonna say to
recommendation,
recommend.
we're not setting.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would second that motion.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a recommendation for for no increase in water rates, no increase in the transportation utility fee rates, and a 5% increase in the sewer utility rates. And it's been, so motion by Councilor Holt, seconded by Tammy Quincy.
Ex-counselor.
So, prior to voting, I have a couple questions.
Yes, discussion time.
Yep.
Discussion. So if I am on both sides of this platform, where basically as a business owner, if I don't see the sewage stuff worked out and more businesses and more houses coming in, I'm losing money. But I'm also a single mom that has zero financial assistance from my ex-husband. I'm doing this on my own. So I'm rocking a couple teenagers on my own. I can't afford an increase as a civilian. However, how long is it going to take us to catch up from only doing a 5% versus a 9% with a $3 difference between the two? Like overall, the concept to me is like, do I bite the bullet now and just pay the extra $3 a month to go between 5 and 9? And then next year, we're looking at like, shoot, we should have done 9, now we're looking at 12, which is just gonna, like, I almost feel like if we're gonna do 0, we got lucky that we don't have to do 1 or 3% on water, and we don't have to do anything on on tough. Is this the year that we bite the bullet and go 9% on sewer? Well, we can, not knowing what anything is gonna happen financially. We know, we're hoping for no more pandemic, no more all of these reasons that we have to like lower those increases. I'm like, as much as I don't want to pay the extra $3 times 2 in town, I kind of am nervous about not doing 9% on a year that we get the grace of not having to increase water and tough. Overall, if we had to do 3%, 3%, 3%, like we've had to do in years past, we're actually paying less by increasing only sewer than if we did 3% water, 3% tough, 3% sewer. I'm a little bit nervous about not going 9% on a year that we got grace on water and tough, even though I don't wanna. Does that make sense?
I would like to resurrect committee member Chelsea Pisani's question from last year. We're looking at 5% and 9%. Can we look at like 7%, like somewhere in the middle? Just a thought.
It is possible if this motion doesn't pass.
Counselor Holt?
One of the reasons that I made that motion, as you know, I'm like the biggest, like I pretty much don't want any rates raised, right? But I see the need for the sewer, but I also was on Facebook this afternoon watching people have a conversation about tonight's meeting and the potential for more rate increases. And overall, I got the impression that first of all, a couple of people said not only can they not afford more, but they've tried to get assistance, but they make too much for assistance. And I know that's a common theme. And I just really feel our community has been asked to take on a lot the last couple of years. And I feel like 5 would at least keep us going, and we can, revisit it next year and see what it looks like. But I can't do that to my community members right now. That's where I stand. Yeah. I feel bad about even doing this, but I can see the need.
No, I was just pointing out that Director Piper had a.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention on this note of the rates and, remember, Pisani, you made me think of something that will come up because when I did the DEQ application, one of the factors is affordability, as we're talking about getting the data parsed out, and we'll see what the median household income is on this side. DEQ for that, unaffordable, and then we'll give you more help to kind of check mark is 1.5% of median household income, and I want to make sure that we're not under that benchmark, but timing wise, like if we kick the can down the road, it could actually come back at us when they do that calculation. And say, well, your water rate's affordable. You don't need as much help as we could or should give you. So I just want to make sure the whole committee was aware of that as well. But to Councilor Holt's point, definitely it's got to be something that your constituents can also accept. So.
I have a question about the timeline on, because in this budget, if I'm not mistaken, it has an accounting for the $10 million in the infrastructure. But we have a $15 million bucket over our heads too, right? That's, what's the timeline on that?
It's going to be in that 7-year period, so it could just be off the edge of the timeline you're seeing here. And I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to scare anybody because we don't know what we're going to get in grants.
Yeah.
But that's we're kind of all in at 12 million out of our fund right now.
Saps all of our reserves.
Saps our reserves. It's what we can borrow, and
We're going to max out everything we can.
Yeah, and hopefully they come through with some grants, and all indicators are that's where this is going. We've got some our senators out there noticing that we need this help.
And so at the 3% increase, it puts us a little bit more in the hole every year. The 5 is breaking even, and then some.
Yeah, 5 is keeping us whole. But and really 5 to 7, we're not getting a whole lot as far as additional reserves, over the years. It's really that 9% that you see the reserves picking up some steam. So I didn't want to like make it more complicated, like 5 keeps us steady, 9, we're building up reserves again. But we are gonna need some help, we're gonna need some grant funds to pull this off, and I'm sure the DEQ is aware of this.
What does the 9 do to our cost of living percentage that you, it wasn't the cost of living, it was the
Percentage of
household
income.
budget?
Affordability.
Yeah, what is it?
My calculator, we can kind of back into that, because if we take that sewer rate, yeah, thank you for asking that question. That's something I thought of as well. Dr. Bian, I was thinking about that this afternoon as well. So the sewer rate at 9% increase for 24-25, we're looking at $68.38. And we do that every month, times 12 months, $820 a year. And we're going to divide that by 1.5%. The DEQ is kind of benchmark. That's a median household income of $54,704 a year.
And ours is currently, before it's been even accounting for desegregation of the east and west side.
Ours is really high.
79, I think, is what I saw last
We're not
time.
even
I think I
close.
saw
It's-
81.
Yeah, oh, it's gone up since I last looked.
It's gone up. Let's see if I can
Yeah, it
find
just really does not represent the base on this water bill. And it's not, it's so unfair.
There's no way someone on Social Security can look at that number and relate to it. It's just not doable.
I just wanted to note, since we brought up Social Security, that we don't take that into account, but I wanted to mention that Social Security benefit increase is 3.2%, whereas the latest CPI is 4.1%. So the most vulnerable are already hurting this year.
Thank you. I saw that too, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ooh, I saw my favorite program coming up.
It's like, it's intimidating to me because we know what we know right now, right? And we don't, I mean, we have no idea what could possibly get thrown at us with water next year or whatever. And I don't love 9%, but I also am terrified of 5% on a year that we're not getting a water or tap increase. So I'm like leaning towards 7% or 9%, something that kind of like, so sorry, but also you're welcome because we didn't have to increase anything else. I just like, I have this fear that next year we're gonna come back and be like, hey, so this stuff went down with water and we've got to do this, and Tough kind of didn't land where it needed to because X, Y, and Z, and we still have to increase sewer next year. We're looking at that. We already know that.
I think Tough will be okay because we have the new businesses
It's true.
coming in.
Agreed.
but we can't
And
have
I think
anything
with
else.
with inflation and the economy and the state that it is in, and I'm in housing, so. I can handle 5%. I can't handle 9. I'm a single mom also with 2 teenagers. And our constituents, no matter what we call it, they're gonna say water went up.
Yeah,
They're
it's
gonna
true.
say it's
Yeah.
expensive, they raised our water again. They don't open the bill.
It's true.
And, I mean, I'm on auto pay now with the new system, thank you to the team for setting that up. And, so I'm not gonna see my bill, I'm not gonna know, I'm not gonna open it. And it's just gonna get paid, and I'm gonna say water went up if I weren't on this committee.
Right.
So I think, I don't know. I was just gonna ask the question, so if we were to look at about a 7% increase as we look at kind of like bottom line numbers, right? So like what's the water bill, right? I guess, is that somewhere kind of in the middle between a 9 and a 5% increase? So again, if I'm, doing real easy math.
Like 5.5.
5 something, 548 or something.
So would that, I guess, would that kind of land about 145? Again, that's also assuming that 3% increase with public safety.
Put 7 in there and see. Yeah, $5. So sewer at 7 is an increase of $4.94 or 4%. Yeah.
So that would be at about 144.78, I think, if I'm reading that right.
Yeah, 74.
74, okay.
Sorry.
Perfect.
I did want to add one more thing before I apologize for forgetting. It's going to come up though when we come together as a council in the future is the wastewater facility, or not wastewater, sorry, storm drain facility is we're looking at a potential fee for that in the future. And we don't have any numbers on it yet. We still have a lot of data crunching to do, and we're working with the consultants. And with all the other projects we got going on, it's gonna take us a while to get to that. I don't even foresee getting it done before the end of this fiscal year. But next fiscal year, we could be looking at another $3 to $4 on the utility bill.
For storm drain,
For
that
storm.
we talked about last year,
Yeah,
per household.
yeah. Yeah, so another thing to think about for this committee is to think about that as well.
There's a motion on the table still, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Want to make sure we didn't forget it and all that.
Before we leave.
All right.
Is there a, do you have a count on how many water customers we have in Creswell versus sewer that would be affected by this number? If sewer isn't represented on the east side.
Correct. There was,
Yeah.
the number was 2,327 or whatever Jim had up there. The east side is approximately 230 sewer users.
Okay.
So you can just take that number off of that.
Okay.
So I'm also sitting in, I think, a similar boat, right? Is that 9% scares me, 5% also scares me, right? For very different reasons. And I think about, I'm thinking about like, what's that number that people are gonna see? What's, even though there is a lot that goes into that number and driving that number, how is that gonna be seen? How is that gonna be felt, right? How is that gonna be lived? And is it livable? And as I think about the future of what it is that we know is coming, we don't know the exact numbers, but we know that there's a big bill coming, right? Is 7% for me, does that split the difference and make me feel more comfortable with understanding 5% it kind of keeps us afloat, right? 9% is we're putting things in reserve. 7% feels more comfortable in terms of just the future, right? And thinking about kind of beyond this year, what does that mean? And so that's kind of where I'm sitting, is that 5% scares me, 9% scares me for very different reasons. And so for me, I would sit more comfortably with a 7% than a 5%.
I'm not going to amend, so. I'm a hard no on this, on 7. I'm at 5 and otherwise
I'm
no.
with Counselor Holt, but we should vote and see where we land.
So any more discussion on the motion on the table of 0% or 0 increase for water rate, 0 increase for tough, and 5% for sewer rate? Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of the rates that I just outlined, please raise your hand or indicate yes. All those opposed? All right, by motion, or by vote of 2 to 4, motion fails. And we are back without a motion on the table.
I'd like to make a motion for 0% water, 0% tough, 7% sewer.
Okay. So the motion on the table is no increase in water, no increase in tough, and a 7% increase in sewer. Is there a second for that motion? All right, Councilor Clark seconds. All right, so we move into discussion.
You're Counselor Clark.
I get confused reading the words
Thank you for that clarification.
You're very welcome. There are 3 Kents in the room.
Yes.
Only one is a counselor. Okay.
Alright, so, seconded by Councilor Kent. All right, so we move into discussion.
Dawn, she's in a meeting.
All right.
Well, I don't know how much I can add other than, in the same way what you said earlier, I feel like 5% is a little scary if something comes up. 9% feels like it's way too much of an imposition. 7% is, in itself is an imposition, in my view, but I feel it's a reasonable one, given what can come forth, that's all.
Okay. Yep. Manager Amber?
I was just going to say that these rates, water and sewer rates, can get ahead of you pretty easily, and they have in many cities. And I think Cottage Grove is raising theirs 13%. But I think that because you meet every year, and you look at it every year, you're not going to run into that kind of a situation. You're not going to have a 13% where you have to catch up. So long as you're, relatively conservative about it, I think you can feel like you did a good job. I wouldn't go up real high though. We don't need to.
The responsibility of this committee falls not just on respecting and honoring the citizens, but also recognizing that we don't want to be handed
A 13% in the future. Yeah.
well, or we are not, this isn't going to happen. I don't want to run into living in a city where it's sorry, but things are literally falling apart and we have no way to fix it. Yes, it falls on everybody, and that's unfortunate. I'm not in a position to pay a penny more, but also what would happen in 2 years if things just don't work how we wanted it to. So we're responsible across the board for protecting the citizens that are fixed income, that are low income, while still being a city and making sure that we can continue to grow and to serve. The only way to serve the low income is to continue being as strong as we are. And I don't know, it's a big responsibility, and it's the same panic attack I have every year that I sit on this committee, is trying to be both and honoring all of it.
And you don't get ahead with DEQ by letting your system run down.
No, exactly.
You just get fines after that. So there is a fine line. You do want to take care of your system, and you do want to provide, but you also want to be cognizant of the impact on the ratepayers. So,
If we have a regime change in November, is there any possibility that the DEQ will back off a little bit? I'm not going to count on that, but I'm curious if there's any.
only if someone takes the EPA in hand.
That's okay.
Because the DEQ says what they're doing now, and they're not just doing it to us, they're doing it to several small communities, is because of the EPA. So I think if there's a regime change and the new regime determines that the EPA may be out of its boundaries and does something about it, we may be able to see a favorable situation there.
That Chevron ruling from the Supreme Court coming up could be interesting too in this regard too. Yeah.
It could.
I'm not making decisions based on this, but it just makes me think about,
It also makes me wonder how long is the trickle down gonna take?
future we try to predict the future, right? And it's just something that popped in my head that's part of the future that could change things too, so.
I've knocked on a lot of doors trying to find out who has the power to make our lives better here in Creswell, and it does not seem to be at the state level, because the DEQ will not elevate it beyond their glass ceiling. But I have heard from our federal folks that they definitely see a need to be cooperative instead of against one another. They shouldn't be so hard on small communities, especially those that are, we're timber communities. We've already had this happen once before.
And yet they're hammering us.
Right, but they're talking about it, not necessarily, I'm not gonna just, grab onto their wagon and say they're gonna achieve it, but they are talking about it. They are talking about this. This is not what they want.
Shall we vote? Say, is there any more discussion on the motion on the table? All right, seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of the proposed, or the recommendation of a 0% increase for water, 0% increase for tough, and a 7% increase for sewer, please raise your hand or otherwise indicate yes. All right, and all those opposed, same sign. By a vote of 4-2, that motion passes. We'll make a recommendation of 0% or 0 increase in water, 0% in transportation utility fees, and 7% in sewer utility rates.
Thank you very much. You guys did a good job.
Good presentation, Jim, thank you.
Are you recording?
Thank you
I
for
was going
being
to say,
with
with
us.
no
Thank
more
you, guys.
agenda items, and we have completed our task. We do not need to meet in that second meeting. I appreciate the gift of 6 minutes. And so we are adjourned at 8:06 PM.
We all got a gift of an hour and a half, I think.